This week on Barbell Shrugged, we share the common qualities of amazing athletes, coaches, and righteous human beings.
Education comes in many forms. Reading, listening, writing, drawing. It's anything that ignites and inspires your mind. The one sure thing to remember is that the search for truth is lifelong. There are no graduation days in the real world. You won't find success waiting for you behind the next big accomplishment or personal record, no matter how big. But there are also no barriers to your success. There will be no final exams and passing grades from here on out. And trust me, nobody cares about your past failures or victories. What matters is what you do in the present moment. And the only thing that determines your future is what you're able to learn today. Your next lesson starts right now.
Welcome to Barbell Shrugged. I'm Mike Bledsoe, standing here with Doug Larson, Chris Moore. We also have Alex Macklin, our flight coach, and he actually does a ton of stuff in the Barbell Shrugged company. He helps make the whole thing actually run, and
a lot of shit.
We don't.
This man behind the scenes.
Yeah. Without Alex, we would all be homeless.
Keeps
more
our
than likely.
We don't have to
together.
work if he was here.
Yeah.
Pretty much.
Keeps our shit together. This guy's a fantastic weightlifting coach.
Absolutely.
Guy has
Thank
like
you.
2 or 3 fucking full-time jobs.
Oh yeah, you put together with CTP and Kurt the flight school and things like that. So
Flight school.
if you hang out on the Barbell Shrugged website long enough, you will run into this man's face,
He's in the logo, in the daily logo.
and he'll be teaching you stuff.
And
Trust
this is the
me.
guy on the podcast, Art. He is.
Yeah?
He's on
Oh,
the-
yeah.
he's,
I wish we had a different picture now because I was like super small back then.
hey, man, you're big enough, man. You know?
We need the yoke version.
Hey, man, at least you're a model.
Right.
You ever thought about yourself as a model? You're a model.
I'm a model. Wow.
If you go to barbellshrug.com right now and sign up for the newsletter, you will get pictures of Alex Macklin in your inbox. That's
Doing a snatch in his man bag.
Oh, God.
No, you're not going to get that.
Maybe not.
today. Today we're going to be talking about some things.
Yeah, things. Right. Some things.
I lost my words. We're going to be talking about what makes a successful athlete, coach, gym owner. Basically, anyone who's successful at life has these certain attributes, and we're going to talk about these certain attributes and how they apply to you specifically.
I would say extraordinarily successful. This is the thing that really sets people apart.
Yeah, this takes people from that, like the moderate, like pretty good to great, really. The reason we're talking about this is because last week, and this is actually why Alex is in town right now, is last week we had a big company team retreat for Barbell Shrugged. There's about 26 people on our team right now.
Not just us, folks.
Yeah, so I think, people think about Barbell Shrugged, they probably think about the people standing in this room right now, but there's a whole team making everything work just the way it needs to work. So we had this big company retreat. We brought, I have a coach. He basically coaches our team on how to run a successful company. And when he came in, he talked about a few different attributes. And one thing he did say is one of the reasons he was excited to work with us. This is definitely a guy that doesn't have to work. It's not like he's taking work from just anybody. But he noticed that we were already kind of on the train. We already had a lot of these attributes inside of our company, and he was excited to work with us to help refine them. But with that being said, he still presented these attributes to the whole company. And when he laid them out, he's like, you guys already do this well, but you can always do better and refine them. And being aware of these attributes alone is going to help you refine them day to day. So when it was brought to our attention, it became very obvious what we needed to do to help be better as a company, better coaches, better athletes. Because as you're sitting there and you're listening to something like this, you're not thinking about just one aspect of life, or you shouldn't be anyways. You should be thinking about, how does this apply to all sorts of all the different parts of my life.
And it does. It applies to everything you might do.
Yeah. So we want to talk about those attributes today because the way he laid it out, I never really thought about it like that before. But as he laid it out, he goes,
it was really obvious. Like,
you see examples of it.
Right,
Yeah.
the difference between the two, low performance and then high performance attributes. Yeah.
And then when you have that awareness shift, you can immediately feel the difference that it would make if you kept that and went about your activities. Because all the conditions can be the same, but the way you thought about it changed the way you can get the outcome.
Yeah, and you see it like within yourself too. Like, I've been doing this like the whole time, and like it opens your eyes up. Like maybe I should.
Did you have any personal shame ran upon you? Oh,
kind of,
my God.
yeah. Actually, a lot of, yeah. And
let's hear about your personal shame in front of everybody.
Well, some of the attributes, like for instance, we talked about knowing versus learning.
That was the first one we were going to talk about. It's on the board.
That was the first one.
What
yeah.
perfect timing, Alex. Jesus.
Yeah. So like the whole example between knowing versus learning something, like if you've been doing something for a while, you have this idea in your head how it's supposed to be done, and then you kind of feel like, if someone does it differently, that it's conflicting with you, and you try to like keep them doing the same way that you've been doing, but maybe they have a reason that they're doing it differently, and you should be trying to figure out why they're doing it differently, and that's like the learning aspect. So if you just tell them what to do all the time, then you can have, you're not really growing as a person, I think,
Yeah, I think we've all seen this.
Yeah.
And we've all probably been there at some point. I know I have.
I think every human being has struggled to overcome this at some point in their journey.
Oh, yeah. There's,
It's a primate thing.
You learn a certain amount of information about this thing. You find some level of success, and now you can't shut up about it.
Right.
And now someone wants to state their opinion, or they're doing something a different way than what you would do it. And then you basically, anytime you go into the knowing realm, you fall out of learning. Like the moment you go into knowing, your learning is just completely turned off.
If you ever run one article, or you got done with that one political science class in college, and you went to your next family reunion, it's like, I know what's wrong with all you people. I'm 22, I've got a degree, and I got shit figured out. Man, you're right on this topic.
Well, to add some context to this real quick, so Brian, your coach, has been in San Francisco in the world of tech for decades now, and he works with super high level companies where he works with Apple, and he works with LinkedIn, and he works with Google, and he works with those type of companies. And he's worked with a lot of companies that have done really well and succeeded. He's worked with a lot of companies that have not done so well and have gone out of business. And so he's compiled this kind of list of these three comparisons. As Alex said, high performing companies do A, and low performing companies do B. Or actually, in the case of what we're going to talk about today, the low-performing company example would come first. That would be knowing in the example we talked about. And then the high-performing company would have, more specifically, a culture of learning versus a culture of knowing. And in tech, where everything is evolving so quickly, everything's, innovations are happening on a daily or hourly basis almost, it seems. So having a culture of knowing in a company like that means that you're only going to know the right answer for so long.
Right.
And then all of a sudden, a year or two later, what you know isn't really relevant anymore. And if you have a culture of learning, then what you're learning keeps you relevant rather than the case of knowing, makes you relevant only for a very small period of time. If you have that culture of learning, you'll stay relevant well into the future. So, you can take that example and pull it into any time you're interacting with people in almost any setting. When you're interacting with your coach as an athlete, when you're interacting with your athlete as a coach, when you are interacting with other coaches, when you're interacting with the owner of the gym, interacting with your family, interacting with anyone who you're trying to give information and advice to or get information and advice from. So it doesn't have to be just for business owners, even though that's kind of originally how we learned it. I think applying this to athletes is very relevant.
Well, I liked your point about Silicon Valley, how it rapidly changes, because I can see, anybody can see, in health and fitness today, rapidly evolving, super evolving situation where new methods are being mixed, new outcomes, new ideas floating really faster than ever before. So that mindset is very helpful now.
Yeah, it's not that much different with training because this information is being shared so quickly now.
And maybe it's true for everything because the information period is being shared so quick. No matter what you're talking about, you got to be on the fucking ball to stay evolving.
Right.
Yeah.
And so one thing that I've learned from a mutual friend of all of ours and also a mutual friend of your coach, Brian, is that Eben Pagan has taught us that the number one phrase that keeps you from learning is the phrase, I know.
I know.
Yeah. If you say, I know, even if you do know, maybe you know 99% of it, but there's that 1% piece, even if you're already an expert, that you could perfect and tweak and refine and maybe get some more perspective on, and maybe you would change your mind about that one piece. So by going into any situation with the frame of I already know that, keeps you from learning.
Right.
If I went to a mobility seminar or a technique seminar or a nutrition seminar or whatever, if I walk in there and I'm like, I already fucking know all this shit, I've been doing this my whole goddamn life, then you know what? Guess what? I'm not going to learn anything. Like because I'm too resistant at that point. It's too big of like a blow to the ego to take in that new information and realize to myself that I don't actually know all that. And if I went into a situation like that, I wouldn't learn anything, and that'd be really bad for me. But every time I go to a seminar or go to a new gym, it's like, okay, I'm here, and I can't go in with that frame where I think I already know it, because if I go in like that, it's a guarantee that I won't learn anything, and it'll be a big waste of my time.
Yeah. Right.
So I'm usually looking for the piece that I don't know, because there's always something you don't know. Remember, mastery is an asymptote, right? There's four people that are like, yeah, hell yeah.
I looked up the official definition of that. I'm like, man, I'm glad Doug understands this
I
shit.
got a lot of tweets about that.
I had a lot of people go like, Mike, why'd you give him a hard time? It was not because I don't appreciate math. Like a lot of people thought, it was like, I thought because nobody was going to catch it. I was like,
all the math nerds were like, hell yeah.
These guys are, you too, Alex, you guys are much better at calculus and shit than I am.
I know asymptotes.
Asymptote. What the fuck is asymptote?
The limit. Yeah. Yeah, actually, what you brought up, Doug, is you see that in weightlifting all the time. Like, you know, a lot of weightlifters or even weightlifting coaches would be like, I already know how to do this. This is the only way to do it. This is the right way.
It's a default.
Yeah.
That kind of develops in a lot of people.
Yeah, and actually, what's crazy, so I was at Bergener's gym this morning, and I wish I got it on camera because I liked what he said about, he was trying to tell everybody, like, you know, there's not really what's wrong. It's just, you know, what works for you. And, you know, when you come here, I'm going to teach you, you know, the way that I know. But, you know, if you go somewhere else, you should have an open mind and go learn from them and see, you know, because everybody has a different way and you're always going to learn something.
Yeah,
you know?
I think what you just described is, if you could like nail down one characteristic of a coach if you're evaluating it, folks. Does your coach have that kind of attitude, like, I have something to give you, and I'll give it to you, and I want to encourage you to get all the information you can and see it from as many angles as possible, versus if you do it that way, you're getting the fuck out of here because it's my way or the highway. You can immediately tell that difference.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's what makes like a really good coach, like a great coach, rather than just, you know, a good coach.
Absolutely.
Having an open mind.
Yeah, one thing I've seen with interacting with other people and coaching and having a wife and like trying to be in positive relationships is that
you laugh like you motherfuckers and your wives.
he's like, I'm not going to do that anytime soon.
What about kids? What kind of feelings that trigger in your stomach? Oh damn! Oh no!
Good God, what the hell was I going to say?
Oh no!
Sorry.
I actually don't remember what I was going to say.
Well, I'll pick it up.
Fuck, Doug, how many shows in a row did I not derail you? And I'm broken straight. Shit. You gotta think of it. You're really smart.
If you want to identify, like if you're trying to figure out, oh man, am I in a state of knowing or am I in a state of learning on a regular basis? Do you find yourself telling more than you're asking? So I think there are even very skilled coaches you'll find, and people who teach by asking questions, and they kind of lead the process of discovery. In my opinion, that's a much better way of leaving an impression on somebody, and really a lesson sticking with them is allow them to kind of discover their own way versus just telling them the information and just like dictating it to them. I don't know how many times I've tried to teach somebody by asking them a series of questions, and then I walk away going, holy shit. Like, I really learned something. Like, I was like, this person who's like much younger than me, like, taught me something because I'm just asking them questions, and I see them processing. I watched their process of discovery, and then I'm like, oh. And then I discovered myself in the process.
Well, if you're just telling somebody something and you're just blindly telling them and not asking them all, what's their situation, you're basically assuming at that point a lot of things. And so, like, assumptions are like a huge thing, I feel like, of a knowing trait, because
they make an ass of all of us.
Yeah, exactly. So you're just telling people stuff that, and you have no idea what they're coming from. So
right. Understanding why somebody's doing something is really the key. So if someone comes up to me and says, should I squat twice a week? I'm not going to say yes or no.
Right.
I'm going to say, oh, I don't know. Like, why do you want to squat twice a week? Like, give me some perspective on what you're trying to do and why you think that's a good idea at all.
Yeah.
This is why all those questions on social media are tough.
I heard that.
Should I do this?
Yeah.
Can you answer in 140 characters or less? I'm like, fuck, I have no idea. Like, I need way more information from you than you need from me.
That's right.
Well, one thing that Brian was saying is that the high performance tends to make people uncomfortable. And I kind of that kind of resonated with me, because when you ask people, like, well, like in that situation, like, well, why do you want to squat 2 times a week? People may get really defensive about, like, that. But that's just you trying to learn more about their situation.
What should they do in that case?
What?
Feel as judged as possible.
What should they do in that case?
In what case?
They don't know why I'm saying it, so they should say, why do you want to know why I want to do it?
Turn it around.
Why are you asking me that?
But the low.
Why? Then it's just why looks at each other. Slow departure.
Yeah. But I really like what he said, though.
I don't know about this guy.
I really like what Brian said, though, is that uncomfortableness is that growing and learning things is uncomfortable sometimes because it's unknown, but the knowing, the low performance is easy, and that's a sign of that mediocrity.
He said sometimes I take it one step further and say, if you are in a state of learning and growing, you're probably always going to feel uncomfortable.
Unsure, right.
If you feel very comfortable, I think you're probably fucked.
Yeah.
That means you're probably way behind the leading edge of where you would find your best self.
Absolutely.
And your new information.
That's
you're
actually,
way behind.
That's actually another thing that our friend Evan says, is that all learning takes place outside your comfort zone.
I think it has to.
If you're inside your comfort zone, there's no possibility for learning because you already know it.
You already know it.
Yeah.
Right. The same thing we're just saying right now. Story I was telling earlier before the show started was I was at NSCA maybe 12 years ago, something like that. And
National Strength and Conditioning Association, for folks who may need to break out the Googles.
That's all right. So we were at a conference in Vegas, and me and my strength coach, Mark, at the time, now still a very good friend of mine, who taught me pretty much essentially everything I know about lifting, or at least until I got to college or graduate school. I was hanging out with him because he was very generous and took me to lots of conferences and whatnot when I was younger. And Boyd Epley came by, who was like one of the first very notable strength coaches to basically ever be. Strength coaching isn't a very old profession. It's only a couple of decades old.
On a collegiate level, at least, I think he kind of founded the thing.
Yeah, he's pretty much the one that put strength and conditioning on the map. And he did a bunch of other notable things. I don't know his whole history, but he's a somebody. And if anyone knows something about strength and conditioning, he's one person who should know.
Yeah.
And came by. We were watching somebody do something. I don't remember the whole situation, but came over and talked to me and Mark, and was like, we were demoing something or playing with something. And he was like, why would you use something like that? And we said, we were thinking about doing it for these reasons and whatnot. And he was like, oh, that's very interesting. Thank you. And kind of just kept walking. He was just walking by, and what was I 20 years old? I knew something about strength and conditioning, but not nearly as much as the guy who damn near founded the whole profession. And he asked me what I thought, and I told him what I thought, and he said thank you, and he walked away. Didn't try to say no, that's not why you would do that, or you didn't tell me it was a good idea or not. He was just like, that's interesting. He just wanted to learn what I had to say about it, and he could have been doing it for a million reasons. He could have been like, let me get this person who doesn't know what's going on perspective on this. I don't know why he asked me, but he is in a place of learning. He is not trying to impress anybody with his knowledge base or trying to prove that he knows the quote unquote right way to do things. He was just trying to learn something. And he easily could not even go to those conferences and just be like, you know what? I already know all that shit.
I'm the fucking man. Who cares? Kick back in his chair. Right. Margarita, mojito.
That's right. Yeah, and for someone who's trying to achieve mastery, that's the only way to do it.
I think one of the most important things you can focus on, I think it's, if you want to be a good writer, a coach, you want to be a good spouse or
an athlete,
or father, I think one of the skills, and it is a skill, and it's something I've struggled with my whole life, but I found the more I focus on it, the better I get, is that there's an art and a skill to observing and to be in the habit of looking for things that are interesting. So you don't just walk through a crowded auditorium of people doing all kinds of strength conditioning shit. You're observing what's going on as you're rushing to the place you got to be, because everywhere around you are endless things you could observe that could hold lessons for you. Like this guy was observing. It's one more data point to add of your map of data points that give you a bigger framework of the truth. The more data points, the closer to the truth you will get. That's why I sort of feel that vibe.
Yeah.
Observing is super important. It's something it's like being present. Always has to be worked on.
Mm-hmm. Our buddy Zach Evanesh always says, always be a white belt. It's kind of a martial arts thing where you have a white belt when you're a beginner, and then of course everyone knows that when you're an expert, so to speak, that you're a black belt, which isn't necessarily true, but that's kind of what people think. But even within
black
martial
belts
arts,
everywhere, angry with you now.
Especially the fake ones that get their ass beat on YouTube. I ain't saying who that was, but
well, there's plenty of people in the world of martial arts that think that you don't know anything at all until you're a black belt. Like once you're a black belt, now the learning can begin.
You start learning, yeah.
And that's something that's talked about in many different martial arts. And actually, a lot of people even say like once you're a black belt, if you have your black belt for a long time, like people that have the blackest belts, they're black because they're brand new, and then they kind of fade to gray over time. You wash them and they get worn out, and they turn lighter and lighter and lighter, and then the theory goes like you start as a black belt and then it fades kind of back to white, and then you start all over again, is what I remember hearing that like in Taekwondo when I was like 14 and whatnot. So
Taekwondo,
they fucking tricked you, man.
they're just trying to keep me in
Good
class
story.
forever.
don't keep paying your dues, man.
Your money.
Don't do MMA. This is cool enough for you. No, not another one.
Right. The whole concept though is that you never stop learning. Like you keep going, and there's no such thing as being done. There is no done. There's always something more to learn. And so if you ever find yourself in a place where you're like, I think I did it, I'm done, I've figured out every piece of it that I need to figure out, then you're deluding yourself, or you're lying to yourself. There's always something more. Mastery is not possible to achieve. There's only the pursuit of mastery.
Yeah, and that reminds me, Doug, I say that people also get caught up in that I want to do the athlete thing. I want to be a great athlete, great lifter, great coach, great whatever, but I'm young. I haven't learned all I think I should learn. I haven't got enough accolades that I think people will now take my opinion seriously. I think you get in a trap, too, of if you chase knowing enough, the amount of knowing you'll find will never fucking be enough to make you feel like you know enough. Like the more you chase if you're numbers driven and all that matters is how much you lift in the gym, there's always going to be somebody lifting more. It'll always cause that tension to reemerge in you. Mm-hmm. But if you start with a learning attitude and you focus on what can I learn today and how can I ask a good question to get somebody else to have an insight that I have, no matter where you are, that's really where magic can start happening, I think.
Right, I totally agree with that. Like you guys heard the term the hedonic treadmill? Like hedonic means happiness, the happiness treadmill, so to speak, where if you're trying to like keep up with the Joneses and you're trying to like get the bigger house and the nicer car and make more money, and like you keep doing that, you can keep doing that forever, never ever being happy. There's plenty of millionaires and billionaires even that aren't happy people. They're always in pursuit of more of the thing that doesn't actually cause any amount of happiness, or more specifically any amount of fulfillment. So it's very similar. Like you're never ever going to get to the point where you know enough, because there's always more to know. And so if that's your barometer, or that's a better term maybe, if that's like the actual end goal is to know something, but there's no such thing as ever knowing anything, you can only pursue knowing because there's no end ever, then you're going to be unhappy forever. But if you value learning instead, then you can be happy every single day because you can always learn, and there's always something more to learn. And so if you're coming at it from that perspective, then your day-to-day happiness as a state is much more likely.
Are you ever frustrated that you'll never know it all?
Yes.
Yeah, me too. All right.
If anybody had a shot, I think among us especially, Doug would have a shot.
That's true.
He's like, it's not happening.
So what are some habits like of maybe not being a more learning person? Because there's definitely, I feel like you can definitely develop, if you're a knowing person, you can develop into a learning type person. Like what are some things that maybe learning people tend to do?
I was actually tricked into this. Into learning once, and
one time I got taught the thing.
I read the book How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Yeah.
And basically, it suggests that instead of telling people things, you should ask them about themselves. And then once I started that as a habit, sometimes I would catch myself. I'd be in a conversation, and then I would go, oh, I'm talking way too much.
About yourself.
I'll be talking about myself. I need to pull back and ask them about them. And next thing I know, I ended up learning all sorts of stuff, which I had no idea. Like
You start listening.
I knew everything about politics. I knew the right answer to a lot of things until I started listening to people. And then I was like, oh, well, maybe that perspective, I get it now. Like, and just catching yourself from talking about yourself and then just asking people about them, because you're going to find out what they're passionate about. And they're probably an expert in something in which you may not even be aware of, and now you're learning very
you're
quickly.
Learning from them, and then they may know something that you guys share a common interest in, and you didn't even know. So yeah, you grow by learning from them too.
I think it's just the practice of asking questions, and the more questions you can ask, the better. And then if you can just be aware of when you are telling too much and just need to move over the ask. It's really easy. I mean, as soon as you notice it, don't go, well, I'm already in the telling thing, I'm going to go with it. Don't do that. Just stop and then just start asking questions.
Side note, I feel like this is a good way to get women too, is just ask them a bunch of questions.
Oh yeah.
I was gonna say the flip.
Charlotte's shaking her head.
It would have been a great way to get women if you didn't say that on a very public forum.
They're all suspect.
They're on you now.
What do you think? What do you think about stuff, darling?
Barbell dating advice? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I was gonna say this helps you, but it also helps you to actually understand the place where the person you're working with, where they're actually coming from.
Yeah.
It's like we all see a lot of coaches who it's very clear that the objective is to say as much to the audience and demonstrate as much significance and proof of authority as possible, versus coaches who you can tell the mindset or the approach is, I need to see where you are viewing this problem from. I need to know and understand, actually care about where you're coming from.
Right.
I need to think carefully about your experience and where your mindset is at, so I know how to best approach you.
Yeah.
Versus coming in assumptions and with something to prove.
Yeah,
on
already
my,
knowing
on my, on my
you
end.
fucked up.
See, it's true.
Exactly.
Well, that's what you need. I think honestly, that's what you need in business and in relationships. And to be a good coach is the more you ask, the more you can honestly engage, the better everything will be.
With that, I think we'll take a break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the next 2 or 3 steps to picking up chicks.
Welcome back to Technique Water, everybody. This week, we're making Alex's upper chest totally jacked. Look at this man meat. We're going to add 2 inches here. This week, I want to show you guys everything you need to know about an exercise you don't see prescribed very often in CrossFit boxes, but I'm not sure why not. The exercise is the incline press. Woo! Now, before you call this just a non-functional bodybuilder exercise, well, I guess it can be. I mean, duh. If you want to do this chicken-winged with a limp, lazy posture throughout your body, you can do that. And it would still be okay for just training your upper chest. But what we want to do is make this an exercise that's going to allow us to put barbells overhead in a more strong and athletic way. Right, before we get going, the first thing you're going to need is a bench. If you have an adjustable bench in your box, that's fantastic. It's a nice, stable structure made just for this. If you don't have that, what I'd recommend you do is get something like this bench right here. This standalone bench press. You can slide into your rack or what have you. Take one side, put it up on the end of a plyometric box. We got to think like 24 inches maybe or 20 inches, that'd be fine. Get it close to 45 degrees you can. That's a good starting point. Put a piece of rubber on top to keep it more stable. Don't go too heavy. Make sure you have proper spotters. Make sure it's structured. I'm not saying it's a safe thing to do. I'm not telling you to do it, but do what you gotta do. The most important point I can make about pressing of any kind, military pressing, incline pressing like we're doing here, bench pressing, you have to have your feet in an anchored, strong position. So Alex, put them wherever they would normally go. Just put them up and drop them. So from here, if you want a little bit out and forward, well, not quite that far, a little bit out, widen the feet, drive them in the ground through the heel. You would create a nice wide structure. This is how I like to press. If it feels a little uncomfortable, you can bring them a little closer and back, so coil them underneath you a little bit. And then every time you press, you gotta keep tension going through your leg into the ground so you stay nice and anchored. For your spine, you don't wanna overarch. That's not necessary, it's not a good idea. but you don't want to just lay here. Let the force come through your leg. Keep a nice, gentle bow in your spine. So if I came and hit you, you'd be stable. The more stable you are, the more this will transfer. For grip, I like to grab pretty close. You can also grab right where you jerk or military press, or you just grab wherever you're comfortable. Alex, take your grip on the bar, man. So, the most important thing I want you to do is don't just pick this up. So just lazily pick that barbell up and start pressing with your elbows out, Alex. This is the bad thing to do. Sloppy motion, the bar coming up at a different trajectory each time. You see how wild this is? If the barbell comes up in this way, that's bad. Your genitals won't like this barbell on them. Forearms, come here, CTP. Look at the forearm. You want your forearm to be in a very good position. I would say this grip is too wide. Alex, bring your grip in and show people what a vertical forearm position looks like. And then, just like you would jerk, pull your elbows forward a little bit, keep a full grip on the bar, maybe your wrist can come back a little bit. So this is now a nice tense structured position. The shoulder blades are gonna come down and back so that this now becomes a super duper rigid structure. You can touch a little bit here. This allows you, if you're not so good at getting the bar up here and getting a nice, good, this is not a good jerk position, but if you really struggle with structure and building a good platform from which to jerk strongly, this is a good way of practicing that. So if Alex was gonna work the incline press, this whole time I would have him basically pretend like he's about to jerk. So this is all very structurally sound. His abs are engaged, his spine is tense and coiled. The force never leaves his legs. These are strong and flexed, and his feet are anchored. They're not picking up and flopping all around. Watch out, buddy. So when Alex presses this bar, he's gonna come straight up and then slightly back so the bar is basically over his nose. The reason why this is such a good exercise for building the jerk and all that is because unlike the bench press, the bar is going overhead. It's a little bit more specific to what we're training for. So therefore, it's a better choice for assistance work maybe for a lot of people, especially if you've done a lot of bench pressing already. The bench press will not help you go overhead, but going overhead better will allow you to bench press just fine. Keep that in mind. So let's show you what it looks like from start to finish. Strong position, nice and coiled. Grab the bar for me, Alex. So first things first, shoulder blades back and tight. He's gonna drag the barbell out of the rack, come straight down, coil position, good elbow position. He's gonna squeeze the bar. He's gonna keep his hands around firmly. And he's gonna press really strong out the finish, right to the tip top. Stay nice and tight. Drive, straight up and back. Right there, yeah. Boom, right there. Look how strong that is. Now see, if Alex practices this, he'll get better and more comfortable when he's in military press position and when he catches a clean and stands up and is now used to keeping a nice structured, very tense position from whence to jerk.
Did you just say winced?
From whence to jerk. Oh no, it's whatever. One variation of the exercise, you can get rid of the dumbbell or the barbell and switch to dumbbells. You can also do it with kettlebells. I want to show you the dumbbell variety and make a point about shoulder health. The great thing about incline pressing is that if your shoulders are bothering you from bench pressing, like if you have AC joint problems or what have you, shoulder tendonitis, if you raise yourself up in incline position, the load's a little bit reduced. My son is screaming. The load's a little bit less, and it's not so tough on your shoulders to bring it down here in this incline position versus a deep bench press position. So if your shoulders are banged up, try this variety. So Alex is gonna pick up the dumbbells. Every point about performance remains the same. Feet are anchored, legs are tense. He's gonna just casually and quickly kick the weight back up. The heavier these get, obviously the squirrelier it is. So for it to be a little bit easier on his arms, I'll make sure he has a hammer style grip, palms facing in. So what he's gonna do is just smoothly drive with the elbows straight up, squeeze his arms, squeeze the triceps, and hold that weight at extension for like maybe a second. Go ahead, man. Drive straight up, drive straight down. Again, do not let your shoulders get out of position or else they won't really transfer. We're gonna teach ourselves to be in better position by bringing it down slowly, keeping a nice rock solid position, holding, keeping tension across our chest and our shoulder blades, and we're just gonna drive straight up and hold. Now, for the barbell, you wanna load this progressively like you do any other major barbell exercise. Heavy sets of 5 are golden. Put 5 pounds on the bar, every week for 2 months. You'll be much, much stronger, and you'll probably jerk a little bit better, is my guess. For this exercise, it doesn't make sense to load it to like a heavy set of 5. Do this for reps. Do it at least once a week. One of the best ways to keep your shoulders fresh and strong and to keep your work capacity up and keep the wear and tear down is do a lot of reps on an exercise like this, or ring push-ups, or any high rep pressing exercise. If you do 2 to 3 sets of 15 to 25 reps, fill the chest with blood, do a lot of reps, get a good burn. That'll help bring your capacity up. It'll help you survive tough jerking sessions by allowing you to do more work without getting so fatigued. So you want to show 1 set of 10 here, we'll have that. So again, after a heavy jerking session, if Alex is a little beat up, heavy jerking session. Yeah, man, you jerk it hard, bro. You can just do 2 to 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps or whatever you want to do, and you'll feel like a new person. Do a couple, man. Up and down. Yeah, it's a small exercise. It's not going to make or break your weightlifting, but if you struggle keeping position, this is a way for you to practice that position without having to use a heavy barbell, because if you do that a bunch with bad position, you're going to get hurt. Or as Doug would say, you're going to miss the bar out front, you'll break your spine, everybody's going to hate you, and you'll die. Isn't that right, Alex? You getting swole yet? Oh, yeah. How's that man meat coming along? Oh, you're well done. That is the incline press. Do it. You will be much more comfortable and strong going overhead. That's it for this week's episode of Technique WOD. For more great tips and tricks how you can perform better, and Alex will show you, go to barbellshrugged.com. Click on Technique WOD on the banner up top, and have fun, man. Until next time, see you later, dude. Cheers.
Is that the best clap you got? Man, you should see Tony Robbins clap. You're doing it like half of his...
He's got banana hands, man.
It's all about what you believe to achieve with the clap.
Oh, jeez.
Is this happening?
I feel like we're going.
And we're back talking about the attributes of successful people.
Banana hands?
And banana hands.
Picking up chicks.
And that.
And that. All right, next 2 things on the docket. We have certainty versus clarity.
What does that mean, Michael?
Oh, that's what I was going to ask somebody else.
This one was kind of hard for me. Like, it was
This
difficult.
was the hardest out of the 3 for sure.
Yeah, definitely out of
Agreed.
like the difference between the two. I almost didn't really see like the difference until Brian kind of explained it a little bit more.
Yeah, so in the last example, the low-performing attribute was knowing and the high-performing attribute was learning. And in this example, the low-performing attribute is certainty, which is kind of like knowing.
Yeah.
Right? So
it
so
goes
it's
along
similar,
with
which
knowing.
is why the...
Right.
Yeah, it's kind of similar, which is why I think it's hard to understand the distinctions and why it's different. But what I got out of it was the low-performing attribute here is that certainty is more about your personal self-limiting beliefs, which in many ways leads to kind of irrational behavior, positive or negative. It could be either one. Like you could have a self-limiting belief around. You gave a good example earlier when we were discussing the show about, someone comes into the gym and they have a self-limiting belief that they can't jump on a 24-inch box or 18-inch box or even a 12-inch box, depending on who you are. They think they can't do it.
Right.
And then if anyone who's been a CrossFit coach for any amount of time has taken someone who thinks they can't do it and then, 20 minutes later they're doing it and now they think it's easy.
Yeah,
because they couldn't get over the fear behind it. Rationally, they thought that there's no way they could ever do that, and it was more psychological than physical.
Yeah. Like, I don't know how many times I've been in, the gym and helping people with their clean or snatch, and they're like, I can't lift this weight. I can't lift this weight. And then, walking them through that and showing that they can and they do it, so that self-limiting belief. Actually, I had that problem a lot too when I first started weightlifting. I would almost like approach a weight and be like, I can't lift this. I was almost afraid, and that fear of the weight, and that was a big thing, for me. And when I got over that, over time, getting more comfortable and knowing exactly what I want to do, and knowing that this is heavy and I've got to treat it like a heavy weight and I've got to attack it. That's how I got over that, So
I guess the subtle distinction is also, some people might say, this thing's tough now. Oh, I will just never be able to master the overhead squat. So it's not just acute. It's like they're projecting out a fate. That because something is giving them a hang-up, they won't be able to overcome that challenge. And of course, you can't with that kind of mindset.
Right. So the low, to tie this all together, the low performing thing was clarity, and that is more about.
I mean, the
high performing.
The high performing thing was clarity.
Oh, excuse me. Yeah, that's right. So sorry. Certainty is the one that we have already mentioned, and that had more to do with your limiting beliefs around what was possible for you. And so low performing people and low performing companies, low performing athletes, they have a very high amount of certainty that they can or can't do something. Whereas high performing people, they have a lot of clarity around 2 things specifically. Nothing to do with their past matters. They have clarity around what is right now.
Right.
Like what factually is the situation? How much can I lift right now? How good is my mobility? How good is my technique?
How many pounds overweight I am or whatever.
Yeah, how many pounds overweight I am, what my body fat percentage is, what I'm eating, how good my diet is, whatever. They know what is currently. And they also have really high-quality clarity around what they want in the future. Okay.
Right.
So as opposed to being certain about what's going to happen, where they have these irrational fears that's driving their behavior about what they think is going to happen in the future, rather they know what is right now, and then they have a very clear vision for what they want to happen in the future. And that has nothing to do with them thinking this is obviously going to happen necessarily. They're not certain that this thing is going to happen. It's more about, I have this thing that I want to happen, and I have a clear path to get there.
Yeah.
So knowing what is and where you want to go, that's what they worry about.
And I feel like, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say that keeps them from being stressed out all the time.
Yeah.
Okay, because they know what is right now, and they know where they want to go. If they focus just on those two things, then it's not a very stressful situation to be in, because you're only focusing on the two things that matter.
Yeah.
I feel like that's a really important part of too, like the goal, like setting goal process. Like where you are right now, and you have where you want to be, and so like that gap in between, you've got to. It goes along with the learning too. You've got to figure out, what do I need to do to get there? What do I need to do to get to where I want to be? So
I think I got reminded of the conversation we had with Bill Phillips around body transformation. You think the self-limiting belief might be, I've always been fat, will be fat. Of course, that's a tough condition to put yourself in, versus the classic scenario of objective, humbling, but actionable starting point, which in this case would be like a before picture. Here is reality. How long did it take me to get here? What are the variables contributing to this? And now all of a sudden you can see what could be manipulated for the better outcome. It gives you a sense of what you can play with and change to make the future happen, versus just the assumption that because I'm this way, the future will be the same as this. Like, I really like the way he has framed and the power of an objective starting point for shaking you out of that belief.
And it's uncomfortable. I think people,
and it's okay.
People are comfortable, kind of going back to what we were talking about, is certainty. Like, it's comfortable to be certain. Like, I can or can't do this thing. It's like, oh, I'm certain of it. It's like, and then that belief, you can kind of live in comfort there, and like, okay, now I just have to accept my fate, one way or the other.
You take the keys out of your hand, you give them to somebody else in your mind, and you are removed from responsibility.
Right. Clarity is like, that's hard work. Like, clarity is like looking at all the data. Like uncovering things that you've probably been hiding from yourself. I mean, this is something
there's plenty there.
I've discovered.
For everybody.
Everybody hides things from themselves all the time.
Chooses to ignore it.
Yeah, and and they don't even realize it. Sometimes you don't make it to the gym as often as you'd like, but you're doing something to distract yourself from going to the gym as frequently as you would be. But you don't even recognize that maybe it's just as simple as like, your morning routine. You're putting something in your morning routine, or you're doing something that's keeping you from doing it, even though like you got this distraction you put in place and you're not even willing to look at it. So like stepping back, looking at all the information, looking at your entire life as a whole, and getting clarity about where you're at.
Objectivity.
I find most people have a hard time. A lot of people have these goals like, I want to be here or be there, but they're not willing to look at where they are right now.
That's the part that takes the most courage, right? It's just the beginning point to say, look, where am I at? Because that requires that you come to terms with a lot of bad habits and decisions that have been made up to that point, possibly. Yeah,
and people tend to look around at other people and go, I want to have what they have. And it's like, well, and that also, there's clarity there as well. It's like, what did that person do to get to that point? And people never want to look at the work that someone did to get there. They really love looking at the end result.
That's a fucking great point.
They love looking at the end result, but they don't want clarity around the work they put in, because if they look at the work that that person put in, then they are gonna realize
I'll make a book.
It's super hard.
Oh shit! I pulled a book out of my bookshelf in quotation marks behind me, but man, I just had a thought. A great book to read, dude. Robert Greene, Mastery. Like there's people like Mozart. Oh, Mozart was a musical genius. No, he fucking worked unimaginably hard.
Right.
To the point to where he actually killed himself from it. I mean, worked himself too hard. But this is a case study. People, no, but it's a case study, and people look at and say, "Oh, I wish I could get there." But if you just treat that person as a case study, and you take a careful, considered look at what brought them there. And I make a habit of seeing, here's somebody I admire. This is something I think I could potentially want to really do one day. And I look at it and I see that person's whatever part in life. They may be 55, successful writer, TV personality, person, whatever it might be, athlete, coach, world-class coach. You can look where you are. Say, okay, well, I desperately feel like I want to be there. I'm going to beat myself for not being there now and all that shit we talked about. But you can quickly see they're 50. I'm 22.
Right.
There's these years ahead of me. Where were they at this point? Were they wayward? Were they doing some kind of other sport? Where were they at 10 years ago? Like, sort of, what is their trajectory? It gives you a sense of like a reality around how long it may take to actually get to that projected point. It gives you a sense of what's realistic, so you don't beat yourself up enough about rushing this development.
Yeah, people wish they had the result, not the path.
Yeah, and then it empowers you to say, I can get there. All I need to do is commit and put in these steps and do the work, and I can fucking make this happen.
Yeah.
Right. This sounds counterintuitive, but having a high amount of certainty almost implies that you understand your past really, really well. So if you look over your life for the last 5 years or so, you know who you are based on your history. So from that, you can extrapolate out, okay, well, I train 5 days a week, every single week, and I never miss, so I'll probably still be in shape in 2 or 3 years. Or, I never budget and I always overspend, so I probably won't have any money in the next 5 years or whatever. like you're going to keep being yourself in most cases. So most people think that if they can look at their past, then they'll be certain about where they're going in the future. They'll still be them in the future. What clarity means, since it's about what is and where you want to be, is that you from that perspective, you can't ignore your past. You don't have to be the person that you were. You can start over right now as whatever is true. Whoever you are right now is true, and whoever you want to be is possible. And you can forget about your past, which means
I highly recommend doing this, by the way. Well, it's much easier said than done, but it's good work. It's good work.
It's tough to throw away who you used to be.
It's good work.
Yeah. You're free to put down the heavy bags whenever you want and quit carrying them around with you. That weigh you down. All the shit you're carrying around from your past, you don't have to hold on to it. Or you can keep just the good parts that are useful and get rid of the baggage that weighs you down.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
But
valuable if you can pull it off.
There's a process called integration where that's exactly what you do is you try to go back into your past and pull out the things that are beneficial and get rid of things that were not. People tend to package everything together and lump it all together. They package it together. They take things that they dislike about themselves. They attach a lot of good things about that, and then they try to forget it. And they're usually pretty successful at it.
But it's always there. But it's always going to limit who you might be.
There's a process called integration, which can be done many different ways. Ask your local therapist about it. Yes, I've been to therapy.
Well, that's something everybody should work to understand themselves fully as possible.
And understand what they want.
It is fucking extraordinarily hard, like Doug's suggestion, but possible, especially if you have the courage to start.
Yeah.
So you brought up having a therapist, quote unquote, and something we talked about the other day that was really interesting is that anyone who deals with people for any period of time eventually realizes that they are a therapist.
They are therapists.
A lot of people call themselves, they're CrossFit coaches, they call themselves a CrossFit therapist, and it's kind of a joke, but it's kind of not a joke.
Right.
Anytime you're dealing with people, if you're a coach or anyone that has to be a leader in any way or that manages people in any way, anytime you are trying to get someone to take your advice, your job, one of your primary jobs, is to make them feel understood.
Yeah.
Right? And that's kind of what therapy is all about. Like asking someone why they feel the way they feel, and letting them share their thoughts with you. And so having a therapist might just mean you had a coach at one point because they kind of are your therapist.
I've actually never seen a psychologist, but I definitely have business coaches where I'm like, I walk out and I'm like, that was a therapy session.
Yeah.
But they just don't have a degree in psychology or whatever. Mm-hmm. So, what are some very actionable steps people can take, Doug?
For the certainty versus clarity thing. So, clarity, again, we said is about knowing what is and knowing what you want. So, you really got to dig into those two things. So, knowing what is, ideally, you would be able to find something that's objective and measurable conveniently in the world of fitness. There's pretty much everything's measurable, whether you're hitting a 1-arm back squat or you're doing one of the CrossFit girls WODs or hero WODs for time, or even if you're running a 400 meter sprint for time, whatever. There's some way to measure those things, and they're observable, measurable, repeatable. That's kind of the mantra behind a lot of the CrossFit training to understand if you are making progress. So we happen to be in a very good world for that. So if you are a person right now who doesn't track any of your metrics, so to speak, that are important to you. If you're a weightlifter, certainly snatch, clean, and jerk are important things to track. Front squat, back squat maybe are important things to track. But I know a lot of people that they lift, or they train or they do whatever, but they don't write anything down ever.
Yeah.
And they really don't even know if they're making progress. They're like, I think I got stronger. And you're like, how do you know? They're like,
I think
I
I
don't know
know what my 1 rep max is.
I kind of feel strong.
They do the same shit in their life. Like, I want to make more money. What'd you do to do it?
Yeah.
Well, or get the job, do the thing I want to do. What are you doing to make that happen? Wishing, shitting in one hand and looking at the other. I don't know. See which one fills up first. You gotta fucking take action. You gotta have a goal and see daily. Am I getting close to this fucking goal or am I not?
That was a phrase my dad always said. Shitting in one hand
and wishing in the other.
Yeah.
Which one fills up faster?
Yeah. Well, like Doug was saying, is it's
Still
got to
don't
be,
get it.
it's got to be,
Or
it's
something
got to
like
be
that.
measurable, and you could say like, well, I want to make more money or I want to train more, but how much is that? What is that? Be specific. Like I want to get in the gym like 4 times a week. So it has to be something very, 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 very concrete.
Yeah, we actually did a whole episode right around New Year's on goal setting. So we're not going to dig into how we prefer to goal set right now, but
It's the only way.
but you should definitely go back and watch that episode because we talk about goal setting essentially the whole time. But the only point that I'm going to make right now is that you should make a goal that is more behavior driven. So with the example that you just gave, show up to the gym 4 times a week. That's something you can control. So if it's behavior driven, it's something that you can control. So show up to the gym 4 times a week. I have some control over that. I gave the example of measuring your back squat, but you actually don't have control over what your back squat ends up being. You only have control over the things that you do to make your back squat go up. So squatting twice a week would be a great example to eventually improve your back squat max in that example.
The last attribute that we want to look at, and this is going to be very much about teams here. I mean, as an individual, you can do it, but I mean, usually if you're working out in the gym,
That's what
you
a
are
gym
also
is.
even if you're competing as an individual or you're working on your individual goals, you still have an environment where there is a team and stuff like that. So
Even if it's just you and your coach.
Yeah, I would say even if it's you and your coach, this applies.
Exactly.
For sure.
That's a team. Two-man team.
Yeah.
Two-man team.
or woman. And
Yes.
So
But-
we
yeah.
have a.
Now you make me look like a sexist asshole, man. I'm like,
Well, you are. I mean, I
no,
don't know.
I'm saying it could be a very lovely, intelligent, awesome, ass-kicking female weightlifting coach and a douchebag man who doesn't deserve to fucking have all that money and that status. Fuck that guy. Him and his testosterone and his jangly balls. Fuck him.
Wow.
Now make your point.
I don't know.
Some shit about alignment.
Like a woman scoring.
I just had to answer the charge with counter energy, so no one.
I'm gonna have to do that more often.
So everybody's clear.
We can do that more often. That was fun. Just poke him a little bit. You'll see some really crazy shit come out.
I do not react well to poking. If you fucking agitate me, I'm gonna get agitated back. Let everybody know. Charlotte.
All right. The last attribute is alignment, which is what you're going for. But the 2 attributes that were compared are agreement versus alignment.
So agreement would be your low performance attribute in this example, and then alignment would be your high performance attribute. So even though all of these low performance attributes, knowing, certainty, agreement, they sound like they would be such good things.
You're right.
So it's kind of counterintuitive that we're saying that they're not necessarily good things. And so that's kind of why we're bringing them up, because at first glance they look like they would be really important and very positive traits. But in this example for agreement and alignment, agreement being the low performance attribute, the way that we were defining agreement is that it's more about methods, like how to get something done, versus alignment, which is more about your purpose, like why something is important, your beliefs around that thing. And so as a team or even just athlete and coach, if you have good alignment on what you're trying to accomplish and why it's important, then it doesn't really matter if you agree on the methods. Right? So if you know that you're an athlete and you're trying to be a better weightlifter, as an example, and so and you want to be a better weightlifter because you want to be the kind of the best you can be, and you want to go to nationals, and you want to do it without wrecking your knees in the process, and you plan on competing weightlifting for 3 to 5 years, and then you probably step away from competing and just do it to be healthy, and you want to be able to still weightlift when you're 45 years old so you can show your kids and all that, and your coach understands exactly why you're lifting weights, why it's important to you, and your beliefs about how extreme the training should be in the context of your whole life. Then now that coach really knows a lot about you, and that coach can program very appropriately for you.
Right.
And now it's not just him saying, okay, well, if
I'm
you
going to
don't-
give you what I think is good for you. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
And there might be some crossover between what he might assume you should be doing and what you actually should be doing based on your goals. There might be some crossover there, but it certainly will be different with him saying, if you come into him and say, I want to be a really good weightlifter, and then that's the whole conversation, he goes, no problem, I got you. And he writes you a workout and he gives it to you.
Here's what Klokov does.
Yeah, and he's going to... In that
He works
example,
for old Russian.
Well, I mean, I say that because what you need and what an Olympic caliber athlete needs, what they're doing might look a lot different than what we're doing over here, different country, different athletes. But if you understand what they're trying to achieve versus what your needs are, it makes it all make a lot of sense, takes a lot of the anxiety away.
right. So if someone comes to me in a more generic example, says, I want to get in shape, what do I do? I don't say, I know exactly how to get you in shape. Here's a bunch of workouts, and I just write them a bunch of workouts, just give it to them without knowing anything about them, because I don't know why they want to get in shape. Like, maybe they just had a knee surgery a couple years ago, and they haven't trained, and they've been sitting on the couch, and they have a bad job, and they just want to be happy and not have a beer gut, and I don't know. Well, that's one very specific situation where the workouts I would write for that person would be radically different than the person that comes in and says, I want to be a competitive weightlifter and go to nationals in 3 years.
Right.
So it's really important to know 100% why somebody wants to do
Or
the
learn.
thing. Yeah. It's hard with the knowing thing. It's hard not to say it ever, but the concept is that you shouldn't think you know it all.
Right.
But it's hard not to use it in everyday language. But yeah, so you do need to know why that person, or to try to understand rather, why that person is doing what they're doing. And you should constantly be relearning and asking that person, why do you want to do this? How's that feel? Do you want to do this? Why is that important to you? That should be a daily conversation if you are coaching an athlete or just interacting with anybody. Asking more questions is a fucking awesome skill. Whether you're trying to pick up chicks or whether you're trying to coach your athletes, asking more questions tends to be something that people just don't do enough of.
Doug, you made a good point earlier how once you have a great understanding of that, then you can realize that there's tons of methods in the mix. Oftentimes, a lot of them are fantastic, and compared to each other, they're just as good, even though they're just different. Now you can pick which one maybe makes most sense to you and apply it to the purpose, knowing that just because you didn't pick the other thing doesn't mean this is somehow like a wrong decision or you're missing out on something. No, there's all kinds of tools to achieve the purpose, and that's what matters.
Right. So back when I was doing more MMA and I was in MMA gyms a lot more frequently, of course, all the other fighters would say, hey, what should I do? And they come ask me for strength and conditioning advice. And in a lot of cases, they'd have a fight in 6 weeks, and they'd be like, man, can you, I need to get ready for my fight. Can you show me how to do the thing, the thing that you do overhead?
The snatching
the
thing.
snatching thing. You know what I mean? I'm like, well, why do you want to do snatches? Yeah. Because, I'm guessing they think it's a really good exercise. It's going to make them really strong, so they're going to be a better fighter. But I don't necessarily know why they want to do it. And so, but if they do come with me with that response, then I say, well, you just want to be a better fighter. You want to be more powerful. You want to be stronger. And, maybe snatching, even though it can do that, kind of, but not probably in 6 weeks. You're probably going to spend most of your time learning how to do it correctly. Any benefit you get from it's going to be minimal at best. In 6 weeks, you'd be better off just, front squatting and pressing and pulling and doing all more pure strength work, really, because snatching isn't necessarily going to make you a better MMA fighter, especially in 6 weeks. But if they come to me and they say, well, I want to learn the Olympic lifts, I do have a fight in 6 weeks, but I want to learn the Olympic lifts because I think they're fucking awesome, and I want to do them the whole rest of my career for 10 years. And it's not this short term, I want to get stronger in the next 6 weeks because I have a fight coming up, and they fully intend to do the Olympic lifts well after their fight, and they have good mobility and all that. Then maybe that's a different conversation. But usually it's not. Usually they're just shit, I'm out of shape, I got to do something, and they see us doing on videos doing snatches and cleans and stuff, and they come to the gym and they say, hey, can you help me out?
Doug is so shredded.
I want to do those things.
I'm going to do the same things Doug does.
That's right.
I feel like, too, what you said, about the understanding, I feel like there has to be a mutual understanding, too.
Totally.
There's got to be, you both have to have that understanding of each other for it to work. So, yeah, if you're a coach or you're, the client, you've got to have this same mentality of alignment and clarity and learning as well as the coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'll say about within a gym, a larger team, there may be multiple coaches all around each other, lots of athletes. In an environment where there are lots of big personalities and people who see things a different way and sometimes disagree, I think that's actually a very healthy thing. The points when those opinions cross are fertile ground for learning. And then as a whole, if we all agree on what we want to achieve, this makes for an overall much stronger group. The last thing you want to fucking have in these situations is a bunch of people who fucking pull back on what they believe or just accept something just to achieve some sort of stasis. In that case, you're just a fucking generic average place. You need diversity and ideas to fucking prime the pump and create a gradient that pulls everybody upwards towards the common goal, I'd say.
Right. We had a really interesting example the other day where you were on Instagram and there was a video of you doing some curls where
Yes,
you
it must be.
He was doing them all wrong.
Curls for the girls.
well,
okay.
you were doing some curls, but you weren't even doing them that crazy.
If anybody's ever seen
wrong, so to speak, there's no
anybody
wrong,
doing dumbbell curls, fucking period, I'd say there's something there that is not by the book. If you want to break out the Bible like Joe reading principles and shit, how many bodybuilders have you seen swinging a little bit? I was just doing some curls to achieve my gunnage, like Pump City, like trying to get on this swole train that Alex is on. I'm way behind. But I was just a little kip at the bottom because, I'm just feeling it. I like to, actually from kettlebell trainers taught me, if I'm moving as a whole and moving this weight more efficiently with some body weight, it's just as fine. It's just perfectly fine. Like, my biceps will get huge, and maybe I'll even get a little bit of training effect from that.
You
But
were
that's
like
not
mildly rocking
it
back
was
and
like
forth.
such a subtle fucking rock that I had no problem with that Instagram moment. It's like, what could possibly go wrong with the sharing of this?
Even if you were rocking really heavy, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, but the funny thing is, we could observe that two trolls went at it fiercely.
They did.
Fierce
They had a
troll battle in the
hilarious
comments.
conversation.
One guy's like, basically like, what in the fuck is this idiot doing? He will never achieve optimal muscle tension and growth with the swinging.
He's already knowing. He's knowing.
Yeah, he's knowing. He's knowing. And the other guy's like, who the fuck are you to tell the Chris Moore how to do fucking bicep curls? And then it quickly, as we noticed, quickly devolved into, fuck this guy, no, fuck that guy. And then 2 or 3 comments later, what was this conversation about curls? What was this about? Egos took over.
I feel like
There was like they wanted to be right so bad that I even noticed that like they were taking on each other's arguments, and like it was almost like a flip flop effect happened.
It's
like,
what happens on Facebook.
It was really fun to watch.
It happens
it's hilarious.
on
You got to go read it.
If you go right now and put Bernie Sanders for president 2016 on your Facebook wall, and then you're going to get comments of people who don't even maybe know what's going on. They just have what they believe, and then they're going to fucking make you believe what they believe, only it never works, ever. Never in the history of fucking primates ever has another human being convinced another monkey person what you're doing is wrong because I happen to know the fucking truth. How much are we going to go back and forth? You need more proof that you cannot fucking convince anybody of anything? No. That's not the way to go about solving a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like internet trolls are definitely low performance.
No one even knows who you
I mean,
are
I feel
making
like
this
that's
shitty comment.
that should be the new definition of an internet troll is low
You're
performance.
you're so low performance, we don't know who the fuck you are, and you're not going to get a comment in return.
Until today.
So
Not saying the name.
the thing that doesn't tend to happen when you get trolled online or anywhere else is that, and this can happen in quote unquote real life as well, is that very often someone sees something like that, they assume that they know what you're trying to do or why you're trying to do it, and they never actually ask you why. It would have made a whole lot more sense for someone to say, I often hear, or I'm pretty sure you're supposed to do this. Why do you do that? Why did you choose to do that today? There's a pro and a con to any variation in training.
Hey, you would have been happy to answer, wouldn't you?
I'd be like, man, I'm trying to get swole as a motherfucker up in here. No, I'd say I'm just doing a few curls and I'm moving a little bit because who cares? They're fucking curls.
And you could have said, I did strict curls for 20 years, and this is just a slight variation.
Yeah.
Or something like that, and there'd be totally nothing wrong with that. So it wasn't like you were being unsafe.
You punk kids could see the day when I was running the rack doing 21 curl sets. I would have shown you fucking strict curls then, back when I was 18 and in my prime for guns.
Right. So I try to remember that myself. If someone comes into the gym and they say, well, my coach told me to squat like this or to do an exercise a little bit kind of quote-unquote weird to me, instead of saying, no, your coach is a fucking idiot, you do it like this, you say, oh, that's interesting. Why did they tell you that? And you start to question them on why, how did that coach get to that conclusion? Because I know a million times I've told somebody to do something, and I know they went back to their coach and they said, Doug said to do this, and their coach went, you don't need to do that. And I'm like, whoa. Because once I go talk to that coach, in either one of those situations, we usually end up agreing on the thing, whatever it happens to be.
You said it differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it wasn't because I said it differently necessarily. It was because, like, if an athlete comes to me and says my coach said to do it like this, and I say, well, I don't know why they would say that, and then I go, where's your coach? And maybe I'm visiting another gym or something like that, and they say, that Coach Billy over there said I should do it like this. I go, that's interesting, and I go over to Billy and I say, he said you should do this, and he goes, oh yeah, no, actually, well, so he had this thing, and then this other thing happened, and we tried this, and we tried that, and we tried this other thing, and it didn't really work, and so for now we're doing this, but we're hoping to regress to this other thing. Like, there'll be a rationale for it more than likely, but I could very easily just jump to the conclusion that Billy's a fucking idiot, and you shouldn't do that because I hadn't gone through all the steps that Billy went through to get to that conclusion.
Right.
So it's just easier to say, why did that happen, or just to go talk to the source. Because that type of confusion happens all the time, especially in the fitness industry.
Yeah, there's so much dogma, in the fitness industry.
Well, yeah, I mean,
loosen your ass cheeks.
as a
and
whole,
then ask
it
a
happens a
question
lot.
instead.
I think most people who work in the fitness industry, we all kind of want the same thing, right?
Right.
We all want people to be healthier and fitter and all this kind of stuff, and we all have our preferred methods for getting there. And a lot of times people get caught up in this very specific method is the only way to get a bigger squat, or this is the only way to shed fat, or this is the only way to do this or that.
Yeah.
And they get very attached to that method, and they quickly forget that we're all trying to do the same thing. And a lot of these methods, they do differ, maybe a little bit in quality or whatever, but they're all going the same direction.
Right.
And they should just learn to help kind of like appreciate the other thing.
That's alignment,
So-
really, going in the
Right.
same direction.
Yeah, instead of like trying to tear down, like someone goes, oh, I don't like the way this coach teaches this thing, just saying, hey, he's trying to help people out. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
Let's focus on the methods I'm using, and maybe even incorporate what they have going on if it's helpful. But like I find, I mean, all you have to do is be on the internet for about 5 minutes, and you can find coaches like attacking each other's
God.
methods, and it's just like
Facebook is the worst.
It's like it's really frustrating, like because once you've been coaching for a while, and if you ever, some people never zoom out. I've seen it. These guys are much older, and then they don't really. I guess they're
stuck in their ways.
They're definitely in their methods, and they have a hard time getting out of it, and it's really frustrating to watch sometimes. But a lot of coaches, they get out, and it's happening. I think a lot of coaches are being forced into it because of the internet. Like a lot of young coaches are going, there's like a generational thing happening where it's like, oh, we have to be very accepting of other things because there's proof this other thing works pretty well too.
Damn internet, fucking
like,
providing proof and all.
Yeah, so it's if we could all not get so wrapped up in the methods and arguing on the internet, maybe we could help more people.
Yeah.
Not gonna happen.
But you know what? Great closing
like-
idea. Great wishful thinking.
One more point to that. I feel like people can recognize that kind of stuff, and they tend to gravitate away from those people. Like the low performance people. People tend to see that subconsciously almost. Like
Probably.
this person's like super negative, and they're know it all, and they don't want to. They're not open minded. They don't want to listen to anybody. I feel like people get kind of really turned off about it. At least I do. I just can't.
It's because you're so smart, Alex.
I know.
Well, hopefully now people hear this and they'll be aware if that's what they are experiencing. They didn't quite know why that would be. Maybe they assume that this is what strength is. Now they realize that that's not necessarily that doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
Boom.
I feel like I know this is a great show. I'm certain of it. Do we all agree?
We are in agreement.
Perfect.
We agree.
Thanks for joining us today. Make sure to go to barbellshrug.com, sign up for the newsletter, and we will see you next time.
Boom.
Later.
Join the conversation every week after the episode over at barbellshrug.com. This is also where you'll find new episodes of Barbell Shrugged, Technique Wad, Nuggets and Pearls, Barbell Business, Get Change, plus new articles every day on our daily blog, written by us, guests of the show, and some of the biggest names in strength and conditioning. So, go there and leave a comment now. Oh my gosh, wow, that's so cool. Yay, that's so awesome.
Did you like this video? If so, subscribe to our channel and share this with your friends.
And if you want even more free, awesome resources to help you reach your fitness goals, plus some updates that we only share over email, head over to barbellshrug.com and sign up for the newsletter.